Welcome, my friend. Today's video is about Homo erectus, the human species that survived longer on this planet than any other in history. What if I told you that a human species lived on Earth for nearly 2 million years? It sounds impossible, but that's exactly what Homo erectus accomplished. While our own species, Homo sapiens, has existed for just over 300,000 years. Homo erectus was already here long before us and continued to exist long after we first appeared. Take a moment to grasp that time scale. Everything our civilization has ever built, the pyramids, the Roman Empire, every kingdom, every war, every city, would fit comfortably inside a single chapter of Homo erectus's story. And there would still be plenty of time left. Imagine that the entire history of modern humanity were a 1,000-page book. Everything we've achieved from the invention of writing to the internet would occupy less than a single page. The other 999 pages would belong to Homo erectus. What's even more remarkable is that Homo erectus wasn't the primitive cave dweller people often imagine. Most scientists believe they were the first human species to leave Africa. No maps, no compass, no idea what lay beyond the horizon. Their bodies already looked surprisingly modern. Long legs, shorter arms, a body perfectly built for walking, running, and exploring vast distances. Earlier, human species remained confined to relatively small parts of Africa. Homo erectus spread across what are now Georgia, China, and Southeast Asia. Each region had different climates, different plants, different predators, with completely different ecosystems. Yet Homo erectus successfully adapted to all of them. For many years, scientists believed Homo erectus lacked innovation because their stone tools changed very little over hundreds of thousands of years. At first glance, that seems like evidence of primitive thinking. Today, we understand the opposite. Their tools already worked exceptionally well. Why redesign something that already solved the problem perfectly? These stone hand axes, known as Acheulean hand axes, were used to butcher animals, scrape hides, and crack open bones to reach the nutritious marrow inside. Simple in appearance, extraordinarily effective in practice. Although their brains were smaller than ours, they were significantly larger than those of earlier human ancestors. More than enough intelligence to solve everyday problems and pass knowledge from one generation to the next. There's also growing evidence that Homo erectus learned how to control fire. Not with the sophistication later achieved by the Neanderthals, but well enough to keep warm, drive away predators, and perhaps even cook part of their food. That alone completely changes the outdated image of the stupid caveman that popular culture still loves to repeat. But even a species that survived almost everything this planet could throw at it couldn't survive forever. And this is where the story becomes even more fascinating. Their end didn't come from war, or a sudden catastrophe, or a stronger predator. The last known populations of Homo erectus became isolated on the island of Java in present-day Indonesia, cut off from the mainland. Separated from other human groups, with nowhere left to migrate, his conditions gradually worsened. The forests they depended on began to shrink. The animals they hunted became increasingly scarce, without new territories, without new populations to mix with. Homo erectus simply ran out of options. The youngest fossils, dating to around 110,000 years ago, reveal something astonishing. Homo erectus was still alive, while other human species, like the Neanderthals, already dominated large parts of Europe and Asia, two completely different human lineages, living at the same time, yet likely never meeting one another. And so, without a single dramatic event to explain everything, a species that had survived nearly 2 million years simply faded away. They weren't conquered, they weren't defeated. They simply ran out of space, out of resources, and eventually out of time. One of the most famous Homo erectus discoveries helps us better understand who these people really were. In Kenya, scientists uncovered the remarkably complete skeleton of a young Homo erectus known as Turkana Boy. He was about 8 years old when he died. His skeleton revealed something extraordinary. Had he reached adulthood, he would have stood nearly as tall as a modern human. That finding alone shattered the old stereotype of Homo erectus as a hunched, awkward creature instead. They were tall, athletic, built to travel enormous distances in search of food and water. There's another fascinating detail few people know. Unlike earlier human species that probably lived in small, isolated groups, evidence suggests Homo erectus hunted cooperatively. Organized group hunts require communication, planning, coordination, a level of teamwork far beyond what most people associate with a so-called primitive species. Perhaps that ability to cooperate, more than anything else, explains how Homo erectus survived across so many different environments for such an incredibly long time. When you compare them to us, their achievement becomes even more astonishing. Homo sapiens has existed for just over 300,000 years. If Homo erectus had survived for the same relative span that it actually did, nearly 2 entire human histories, the length of ours, would fit inside its lifetime. And yet today, outside anthropology textbooks, most people have never even heard of them. Which leaves us with an uncomfortable question, one that lingers long after this video ends. If surviving for nearly 2 million years wasn't enough, what actually determines which species survive and which disappear forever? It wasn't a lack of intelligence. It wasn't a failure to adapt. Homo erectus possessed both. In abundance, what they ultimately lacked was space, time, and perhaps a little luck. Homo erectus wasn't an unfinished draft on the road to becoming us for most of human history. They represented the most successful human species that ever lived, while Homo sapiens is still writing the opening chapters of its story. Homo erectus had already written nearly 2 million years of survival, and perhaps that's exactly why their story matters today, because it reminds us that no species, no matter how successful, is guaranteed to last forever. Homo erectus proved that. They survived climate change, new environments, challenges no previous human species had ever faced, and yet their time eventually came to an end. If you enjoyed learning about Homo erectus, leave a like. Tell us in the comments what surprised you the most about the human species that survived for nearly 2 million years. And subscribe to the channel. Every week, we explore another incredible chapter in the story of humanity, one that will change the way you see our own species,